What's your impression so far of this Davos? It feels very different than previous ones.
It's more intense. There's more leaders here than I think there's ever been. Over 850 CEOs, 400 ministers, 65 heads of state. So there's been a lot of dialogue already in the first kind of 48 hours. A lot of joint business, government leader dialogue around investment. To your point, looking at making deals, looking at co-investment. Every country looking at diversifying trade, bringing business leaders with them to talk about co-investment, or whether it's manufacturing investment, defense spend in Europe and Canada is going up. A lot of discussions about how do we spend $80 billion in Canada on defense. You know, what partners are we looking at, and how do we use that defense spending lever to attract manufacturing investment in automotive, energy investment. So there's a lot of grand bargain discussions going on with business leaders, and I haven't seen that before. And so it's different. It feels different. It's transactional, as you said, but it's exciting at the same time. There's opportunity here.
Well, you're talking about the excitement, and yet you are Royal Bank of Canada. You are expanding in the United States, and right now there is a breakdown in the relationship between these two countries. How problematic is that for you at a time where you have been expanding in the United States, and you do see flows, at least in travel, going the other direction a little bit?
You know, I think we're in this temporary world where we're trying to figure out, you know, how we're going to trade going forward. But I come back to the core of USMCA. Canada really helps America with affordability. We make things in Canadian dollars. We sell it to the U.S. at the U.S. buys it at a 30% discount, whether it's automotive parts, whether it's steel, aluminum, food, and a lot of our canola goes to the United States, and therefore we help keep prices down in the U.S. And if the U.S. were to bring all of that back, it's inflationary. You shortage of labor in the United States. So as you look at the core of USMCA, it's good for America. And I think that gives me comfort that we will come to an arrangement going forward, recognizing this is good for America. It's good for Canada, obviously, but it's good for America, and that's important to the president. There will be change. I don't think it'll be the same agreement going forward. But the core of it, I think, is so important to both sides, and that gives me comfort that we will continue to trade. Canada, and you heard our Prime Minister's message, I'm sure we'll talk about that, it has to diversify trade. I think we've relied on trade to the U.S., substantially big part of our economy, and I think that the conversations that are happening before Davos, after Davos, in Davos are very much about, here's what we're good at. Can we find a grand bargain deal? Can we expand trade across multiple countries, whether it's Europe? A lot of discussion with South Asia and Asia, and a lot of discussion with the Middle East investing in Canada. And what's different about Davos this year, honestly, Lisa, it's risk on Canada.
Let's talk about the Prime Minister's speech. The sharpest tone I've ever heard from Mark Carney about Donald Trump without mentioning Trump's name. He's talking about a new world order, saying these middle countries, if you're not at the table, prepare to get eaten. Does that make it harder when you're talking about things like watching the USMCA trade deal? Do you think that the relationship is going to become more challenging between Canada and the United States?
I think relationships are about value exchange. And if there's good value exchange and you both see a benefit to that, then you're going to find the right place. So when just as I said, there's great value exchange. $400 billion go back and forth across the border every year because there's value. We're the #1 trade relationship with 36 states. Most of those are red states at the end of the day. So when we think about the importance of that relationship beyond that federal level into the state level, it's really important. So I think you come back and you say, it's good for America, it's good for Canada. That's the basis for an exchange of value and going forward. Having said that, I think the Prime Minister is very clear that we haven't done our role in defending ourselves. We haven't invested enough of our GDP in defense, and you've seen that commitment to spend that money. We have to do that. We have to increasingly defend ourselves and it's not just our economic security, it's our physical security. We have to play a bigger role in that. We have to defend the Arctic, and we have to invest in the Arctic, and it's a big part of the commitment we've made to NATO and we've made to the United States that you'll see a greater investment from Canada. We have to have dual use investments, not just military, but commercial and economic investments in the Arctic, and Canada should play a role in doing that. So you're seeing that was a big part of his speech yesterday, and we have to create scale. We're in a world of scale. Businesses need scale, countries need scale, and I think the Prime Minister's message was we have to continue to diversify, but diversify in a way that you continue to build scale in what you need. So I think that's what I took away.
When he says diversify,
yeah.
Does it mean maybe a new strategic partnership with China? Is that what you take from the Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister was just in China a week ago, and it was a very important delegation that he led to China to kind of reset the relationship after a better part of a decade where the relationship had separated. And part of it was to renew economic ties and to agree on areas where we definitely agree, and to say these are areas where we might not agree, but let's focus on where we agree and where we can build a future together. And I think that was a very positive step. You saw China make a commitment to resume buying our canola oil, and that's a very important market for canola. The United States and China are big markets. We ceded a small part of our automotive market, 3% to Chinese imports. That's an affordability issue. China will bring in affordable electric vehicles. So I think that's good for Canadians at the end of the day. So I think there's more to build on, and I think it's part of diversifying across multiple countries.
Okay, so we've gone all this time without talking about what you actually have done. You just had a year that's phenomenal. You had record revenues for any Canadian bank ever, and you have grown tremendously. You beat all of your targets. I'm just wondering, when you're talking about diversifying businesses, does it go to your business as well? Are you expanding in places like China? Are you still planning to expand in the United States?
Our second home market's the United States. We've grown wonderfully in the United States. We just launched a whole new treasury management platform in the United States, RBC Clear, that's had a great reception. A technology leap. We brought in $25 billion of new money from U.S. senior corporates, Fortune kind of 500. So the United States is our second home market, and we continue to invest there. We lend significantly to U.S. corporates. We lend in the mid-corporate space, in the commercial space, and we have the fifth largest high net worth platform in the United States. So the U.S. is very important to us, serving Americans, helping Americans grow. And I told the administration already, yesterday that we've invested significantly in the U.S. economy, and we're part of the solution, and we feel very welcome in the United States. So it's a big part of our strategy. To your point, our strategy has not included China up until now, for all the reasons where we didn't have significant diplomatic ties. We didn't see the basis for that investment, and now we have to review that. I can't say how we would go back in. But if the trade continues to diversify and Canadian corporates invest in China, then we will have to be part of that. What I'm focused on now is the Middle East. Significant investment commitments from the Middle East to Canada. I think one of the themes of Davos is the Middle East is a great place to invest. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, UAE on that side, Riyadh, and Saudi Arabia. Significant commitments on both sides, and you'll see a greater presence from RBC in the Middle East as well. So yes, to your point, it's a great question. You're seeing RBC become a more globally connected bank because Canada is going to become a more globally connected country, and the U.S. is already an incredibly globally connected country.
20 seconds.
Yeah.
One word answer. Is this year going to be better than last year in terms of deals? We've entered the yield very strongly on the senior market side. I'm feeling there's very good momentum. I don't want to see it derailed, so I'm very positive about the year in the future. I feel good, yes. That is a wonderful way of not giving a yes or no answer. RBC CEO Dave McKay, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being with us.